Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. On behalf of the co-host of this event, GAIN, the Micronutrient Forum and Harvest Plus, I'd like to give a warm welcome to all attendees and participants. My name is Lawrence Haddad. I'm the Executive Director of the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition, and this is the high-level launch of the second Global Food Fortification Summit. Now, why is it called high level? Well, first you'll see there is a high level of accomplishment to report on since the first summit in Arusha 5 years ago. 11 countries covering 215 million people passed fortification legislation since Arusha. And if pending legislation passes in India on edible oil and milk, we can add another 500 million people to this tally. That's over 700 million people not suffering from the crippling effects of micronutrient deficiency, 700 million people learning better, 700 million people resisting infection better, 700 million people celebrating better birth outcomes in their families. Second, we're blessed with participants with a high level of decision-making authority in their domains of government, business, civil society, development partners, and research. The panelists are powerful actors in the fight against micronutrient malnutrition, and we are trying to give them what they need to win that fight. Third, you'll hear amongst the panelists today a high level of ambition to make things happen, to complete the fortification agenda by 2030. The gap between what is fortifiable and what is actually fortified remains large. And we're talking about billions, not millions of people. That's a challenge, but it's also an enormous opportunity. And we must seize that, and together we can. Now, our focus is on large-scale food fortification and biofortification. These are two routes to the same goal. Now, for sure, large-scale fortification is decades ahead in development and scale, but biofortification has the potential to reach parts of the population that large-scale cannot. Those where food processing is much more meso, micro level, or even absent. And the scaling of biofortification may be closer at hand than many think. And the summit is one of many in the next year. And they all take place in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. And COVID-19 disruptions have shown us how fragile food systems are, especially for more perishable foods that are high in micronutrient. And in this context, fortification has shown itself to be a resilient delivery mechanism for micronutrients, a classic no regrets investment, especially in these uncertain times. And more than that, in the search for game-changing food system actions, fortification is a game changer, but it's one that's hiding in plain sight. If the legislation in India is passed on edible oil and milk, an extra 500 million people will be less at risk of a hidden hunger. And if that's not a game changer, then I don't know what is. So now it's my pleasure to introduce Henrietta Iv, who will deliver our opening keynote via a pre-recorded video. And Henrietta Iv became UNICEF's 7th executive director on 1st of January 2018. She's worked to champion economic development, education, health, and humanitarian assistance in the public service, in the private sector, and in the nonprofit sector. And she has a career that spans more than 4 decades. She's also the chair of the lead group of the Scaling Up Nutrition movement, and she is an extraordinary champion for nutrition. And if I could have the video, please.
Because when we stand together, we move closer to our goal of ending malnutrition. Because when we stand together, we move closer to our goal of ending malnutrition in all of its forms. We've achieved remarkable progress in the last 20 years. Thanks to the political will, scaled-up investments, and evidence-based interventions, we've reduced the prevalence of child stunting by 1/3. 55 million fewer children were undernourished last year compared to 20 years before, and 80 million more children are benefiting from exclusive breastfeeding. However, more needs to be done. The triple burden of malnutrition, undernutrition, hidden hunger, and overweight threatens the survival, growth, and development of children, young people, economies, and nations. We estimate that at least 1 in 2 of the world's children suffers from hidden hunger, deficiencies in vitamins, and other essential nutrients. Large-scale fortification and bio fortification can help us to address this issue. They can transform food systems and dramatically improve children's diets. Our success with salt iodization is a great example, a story of scientific discovery, policy development, political will, and the full engagement of the private sector, one of the most successful nutrition triumphs of the past century, one that has virtually eliminated iodine deficiency and protected the brains and the futures of generations and the full engagement of the private sector, one of the most successful nutrition triumphs of the past century, one that has virtually eliminated iodine deficiency and protected the brains and the futures of generations of children. 3 decades later, iodized salt is now available in 9 out of 10 households around the world, and it's time to finish the job. We must continue working to find viable business models of working with a small-scale salt producers and with partners in the poorest countries to ensure that iodized salt is available to the poorest and the most vulnerable. We must also strengthen local supplies of potassium iodate to ensure that iodization is maintained, especially with supply chain disruptions caused by COVID-19. And we must go further still. If iodized salt started as an act of imagination, imagine if we could also reduce anemia and developmental delays by fortifying more food with iron and folic acid. Imagine if we could address vitamin A deficiencies that lead to childhood blindness and illness. Imagine how much we could improve the futures of children in over 80 low and middle-income countries if we could scale up food fortification programs. We can do it with leadership, innovations, and investment, and with the support of everyone at this summit. UNICEF stands ready to do our part. We'll soon launch our new nutrition strategy to guide our work over the next decade. In particular, we want to strengthen not just nutrition interventions, but entire food systems that are supported by improvements in all of the sectors that support good nutrition, including health, WASH, education, and social protection systems. The coming decade is critical, and we must work as one to improve the quality of children's foods, food environments, and food practices, including governments, UN partners, civil society, academia, and the private sector, the Scaling Up Nutrition movement, and of course, children, adolescents, and women. Next year alone, we have 2 key opportunities to drive change. 1, the Global Food Systems Summit, convened by the UN Secretary-General, will raise global awareness and drive global commitments and actions that transform food systems. And 2, the Tokyo Nutrition for Growth Summit will bring partners together to make concrete financial, policy, programmatic, or impact commitments to transform the way the world tackles nutrition. We're counting on your support and vocal advocacy to ensure that large-scale fortification and biofortification is at the heart of these discussions. Let us work together to build stronger, more effective, more resilient food systems for our future. Systems that deliver nutritious, safe, affordable, and sustainable diets for children everywhere. And that brings us closer to ending malnutrition once and for all. Thank you, and have a great meeting.
Thank you to Executive Director for those remarks. Really inspirational and sets a fantastic scene for us. Before we get to our opening panel, there's something else we'd like to share with you. And as many of you know, this summit was originally planned to take place in Bangkok last March. Unfortunately, for obvious reasons, it was impossible for us to gather in Bangkok. But part of the plan for the summit delegates in Bangkok was a tour of a fortified rice kernel facility just outside the city. So since we're unable to bring you all to Bangkok for this event, we're bringing a bit of Bangkok experience to you. So we have a 5-minute film for you, up close and personal. Up close and fortified, it may be personal too, with Chef DK, taking us on a virtual tour of a fortified rice kernel facility. Now, standing in for all of us on the tour is Bangkok-based chef Dipankar Khosla, who appears courtesy of the Chef's Manifesto, which is a community of over 700 chef advocates coordinated by SDG2 Advocacy Hub. And as we've just heard from Executive Director 4, the remarkable global success of salt iodization over the last 25 years demonstrates what is possible through the widespread fortification of other staple food vehicles, such as wheat and maize flour, edible oil, and milk. And as this film you're about to see demonstrates, there's also the promise of bringing in new fortification vehicles to fill in any gaps. And rice is one example of this. Only 1% is currently fortified worldwide, and yet rice is a staple food for billions. So this film deals with industrially fortified rice, but later in the program, we'll also hear from leaders working to expand access to bio fortified rice varieties in their countries. So if we can have the video, please.
Chef DK, Dipankar Khosla. I run a restaurant called Haoma, the most sustainable restaurant in Bangkok. Chef DK, Dipankar Khosla. I run a restaurant called Haoma, the most sustainable restaurant in Bangkok. I'm not just saying it, you can go look it up. My main objective in cooking for anyone is basically two things. I cook for the food to be delicious and to make it nutritious. No matter which part of the world you were born in, which caste, creed, sex, or religion, does not matter. Our bodies need to be nourished to be able to keep going. Malnutrition is one of the biggest problems in the world right now. Rice is eaten across the world, like West Africa or Southeast Asia, and Thailand is one of the largest exporters of rice to those places. Carbohydrate is being provided through the rice, but what about the nutrition? What about the vitamins, minerals, and other micronutrients that are essential for the body to function day to day? Today I'm off to the fortification factory to find out why fortified rice is one of the most cost-effective and efficient way of increasing the nutrient value of peoples across the globe. Hey, good to see you, man. Nice to meet you. How are you today? Ben, thank you so much for showing me around. This is amazing. And what I really want to know is why fortification?
Yeah. No, rice fortification is a real game changer, right? It's really there to help fight hidden hunger.
Right.
So people eat a lot of food on a daily basis, staple foods, right? So they do get the calories most of the time. But it doesn't mean that they also get the micronutrients they need. So
that's correct.
Fortifying the staple foods that they eat can really help fight hidden hunger.
That is amazing. And this is the answer to our malnutrition globally.
Absolutely. 1/3 of the world eats rice on a daily basis. So rice fortification is a real game changer.
What is that there?
So this is the vitamin.
That's correct.
Fortifying the staple foods that they eat can really help fight hidden hunger.
That is amazing. And this is the answer to our malnutrition globally.
Absolutely. 1/3 of the world eats rice on a daily basis. So rice fortification is a real game changer.
What is that there?
So this is the vitamin and mineral premix, so the micronutrient premix. We research which parts of the population need what kind of micronutrients.
Okay.
We adjust the formulation as such. So in this micronutrient powder gets blended with the broken rice powder.
Yeah.
And it comes out looking exactly like this.
So not only is the product so cost efficient and so quick to make and nutritionally so high, it is also custom and tailor-made to populations.
Yeah.
This is amazing. This is mind-blowing.
So welcome to the lab.
Thank you.
So we can add a whole range of micronutrients.
Yes.
If you look at the minerals, we can add iron.
Right.
If you look at the vitamins, folic acid, really important for pregnancy.
Right.
And then we have vitamin A.
Yeah.
We can add B vitamins. Right.
Right.
So it's really dependent on what the population needs. Our rice gets blended 1 to 2% with the final product.
Yeah.
And hence the consumer is going to eat rice which is 99% normal rice.
So just 1% gives them everything that they need.
Exactly.
Amazing. it's quick, it's cost effective, it's highly nutritious, then why does the world not know about this bit?
No, you're exactly right. It's astonishing to see that only 1% of the world's rice is fortified.
Yeah.
And yet, everywhere where people eat rice is the prevalence of hidden hunger.
Yeah.
So it's a no-brainer that we should do something about this.
1%, I must be missing something here. Does it taste bad?
No, actually, there's no taste change. But you're the chef. Maybe you can.
I'm going to take some back and I'm going to let you know how that goes.
Exactly.
Okay, lovely. Just got back from the fortification factory and it's been a real eye-opener. I didn't know that fortificated rice was so nutritious, and yet less than 1% of the world really knows about it. Now let's see how it holds up in the kitchen, eh? I'm going to experiment with fortified rice. Not only cooking high-end dishes in my restaurant, but also for the No One Hungry program, where we cook hundreds of meals every day and give out to those who need. It's going to definitely create an impact because it's highly nutritious and it can help better lives. Let's see what the guests think about this. There is no reason why fortified rice should not be cooked in the best kitchens in the world. It can't harm and it can increase the nutrition value, so why not, right?
Yeah, I like that.
Great video there from our chef. It shows exactly why chef advocates are so important to dispel any reservations about fortified foods and to create excitement about them. So thank you very much for that great video. Before we move to the opening panel, a quick note about the Q&A feature here on the event platform. Unfortunately, it won't be possible for panelists to take questions directly from the audience during the live event, but we do have a team from GAIN and Harvest Plus who will be addressing general questions about large-scale food fortification and biofortification in the Q&A box. So please do submit your questions in the Q&A box and they will be answered by the experts from GAIN and Harvest Plus. In addition, questions for particular speakers can be posted in the chat box, and we'll select some of those and invite our panelists to answer them after today's event, and their responses will be posted on the event website. And please do tell us who you are when you're asking your question. So it's now my pleasure to introduce Andreas Bluthner, who will be moderating our opening panel of 3 panels, and this one's called Fortification, a Food System Game Changer Hiding in Plain Sight. Andreas is the Director of Nutrition for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. He's currently leading a refresh of the Foundation's nutrition strategy, which will focus on innovation, private sector engagement, and large-scale food fortification. Andreas also leads cross-foundation collaboration on nutrition, ensuring that all strategies that invest in nutrition are coordinated and aligned for maximum impact. And prior to the Foundation, Andreas served as the Director of Food Fortification and Partnerships for BASF SE, a leading manufacturer of micronutrients and an active partner for decades with global fortification programs and stakeholders everywhere. Andreas, over to you.
Thanks, Lawrence. Thanks for the introduction, and it's a real pleasure for me to be here today. Let me first of all welcome our distinguished panelists here and also the several hundred participants out there. I'm really amazed about the audience. I'm just imagining how that would be if we would be in one room now, but I'm also glad that we have the opportunity to do it in the way we see it. Food fortification, a food system game changer, is what we will discuss today. Let me set the scene a little bit with a few remarks. I think it's important to understand that fortification is not the only intervention, and neither a silver bullet nor is biofortification. It's in context of a food system and other interventions, a very important component, to mention diversification, education, and supplementation also. So these are complementary approaches, and I think it's for the nutrition community very important to be united about that aspect. When we look at large-scale fortification, I think it's a bit a moment of celebration also, because Lawrence had mentioned it. There's millions and millions of people that enjoy the right to food, that enjoy essential nutrition being provided by mills, providing added nutrition to fortified foods. And you have governments stepping up, 130 roundabout having salt mandated in their countries, round about 80 having wheat flours with minerals and vitamins being mandated, round about 35 and counting for edible oil with vitamin A, D, and sometimes E. I think that's very important, but it's also an unfinished agenda we're talking about here, because in our refresh at the Gates Foundation, if we look at the map of global vitamin and mineral deficiencies, we see many countries having deep colors of deficiencies that haven't been able yet to frame the market in a way that it delivers micronutrients to those who are in most need. So there's a gap in regulatory frameworks. And I think there's also a way to go and some potential to bring fortification really in the base of the pyramid segments of the population, because compliance is not everywhere like it should be. So there is a mandate, but not everywhere. I think the government fully has embraced the priority to also monitor, and sometimes business also has not embraced the opportunity to really stick to quality expectation of consumers. I think in times of COVID, it's really important to reconsider that agenda, and therefore I'm really delighted we have the right people here on the panel to discuss with us what can be done, that governments, donors, and private sector can step up as partners and fill these gaps and make this half full glass a full glass at one point, ideally when we come together to the next summit. And the run of show is that our panelists will 3 to 4 minutes have an opening statement, and then we come to some questions. And I would like to open the panel with Inoshi Sharma. Inoshi leads as a director of the Food Fortification Resource Center located at FSSAI, the Eat Right initiative in India, a true food systems initiative, and also works on scaling up nutrition and fortification across the country. She has various health and nutrition assignments before, including supplementation of iron and folic acids. Inoshi, it's a pleasure to have you. Can you tell us a little bit how India is going about the challenge of micronutrient deficiencies?
Thank you so much. Like you just mentioned, the Food Safety Standards Authority of India has in fact been working towards fortification of various staples in the country. In fact, we have operationalized the food fortification regulations in 2016, and they've officially been notified in 2018, which really means that staples like oil, milk with vitamin A and D, wheat flour and rice with iron and folic acid and vitamin B12, and double fortified salt have been provided with regulations. We've also created a +F logo, which is a unique logo which can be placed on the fortified products, which then makes it easier to distinguish between a product which is not fortified. So like you mentioned, we've got the FFRC, the Food Fortification Resource Center, which is like a technical hub which provides a lot of assistance to states as well as the food business operators and various ministries of the government. So at present, we've got about 114 companies across 157 fortified products across various commodities. There are 80 brands of fortified oil, 55 brands of fortified milk, 12 brands of fortified wheat, 8 brands of DFS, and we are still working. I mean, we have 2 brands, but we're still working with the rice. There has been a tremendous traction in the oil and milk industry, with 47% of the top 10 players of packaged refined edible oil industry and 36.6% of the organized milk industry fortifying as per the FSSAI standards. We are also taking forward the mandate of fortifying edible oil and milk through the open market channels. Very soon, we should have the mandate in place, which will ensure that all oil and milk which is available in the open market is fortified. Also, we are currently working towards mandatory fortification of rice because almost 70% of Indians consume rice, and there is a considerable issue of anemia in our country. So with the public distribution system and the open market, we are targeting that maximum number of people will be able to get fortified rice in the next 4 to 5 years at the most. We have the largest programs in the world, the midday meal scheme for school children, and the integrated child development services in rural areas, as well as the public distribution system, through which we are hoping all the 5 staples can be provided. So at present, 22 states and 5 union territories have adopted fortification of several commodities across the government safety net programs. So that's it from me.
Great, thank you very much. I think that really showed us that on framing the market, but also on social safety net programs, there's a space for fortified food. And I think hidden but in plain sight, it's fantastic to see that a government talks about the opportunity of addressing micronutrient deficiencies, because that's the start of taking it on. Arun Baral, it's great to have you, the CEO of Harvest Plus since 2019. And Arun is very active as a leader in Harvest Plus and Bio Fortification in developing and delivering micronutrient-rich staple foods, working on commercialization and partnership efforts, and he brings 30 years in the international agricultural sector to the table across all sectors. It's a real pleasure to have you. What can you tell us about biofortification, the progress that has been made, maybe the complementarity also with other interventions, and what remains to be done?
Thank you, Andres. It's great to be here and great to participate. Quickly, to your question, I'll give the background about biofortification. A lot of people might want to know what it is because it's such a new innovation. Biofortification is basically, breeding crops, staple crops, with high densities of minerals and vitamins, particularly vitamin A, and then in minerals, iron and zinc. And zinc, as you know, is getting a lot of attention in these times. So, the progress on biofortification has been great. 15 years ago, nobody knew what biofortification was, but fast forward now, Harvest Plus, working with its partners, have proven that crops can be bred with high micronutrient densities. When these crops are eaten by people who are malnourished, their nutrition status improves, their health improves. And 15 years later, we have about 370 conventionally bred crops released in the countries, and in 40 countries, and approximately 50 million people have had access to this technology. So I would say, in summary, biofortification in these 15 years, what we have seen is, number one, it's cost effective. Number two, it's evidence-based. And number three, it's very resilient. And also, we're finding it's very, very complementary to industrial fortification, supplementation. So all these 3 technologies, if we can, like you said, make them work together, I think we can work and do sort of a lot of service to the malnutrition problem that we have. So what's ahead? Now, ahead is all about scaling now. Like I said, the crops are ready. They need to be scaled up. And we are looking at, partners, like-minded organizations, governments, private sector, and other civil society actors to scale up. And I just want to give you a quick story because I see Agnes, Dr. Agnes here. And, we started the journey in Rwanda with high iron beans. And Dr. Agnes at that time was the Minister of Agriculture. And Harvest Plus entered Rwanda and worked with the Rwanda Agricultural Board, our CGIAR partners. And really, with her support and leadership, we were able to release new varieties that were much better, not only in nutrition content, but in yield. And, fast forward, end of 2019, approximately 23% of all the production in Rwanda with respect to beans has gone to high iron beans. So, the smallholder farmers are not only getting nutritional benefit, but economic benefit. And now the private sector is getting involved and the government is supporting in further scaling up. So if we can replicate the Rwanda experience in many countries, that would be the end state where the public sector, the private sector, the governments, and all are working together with industrial fortification, supplementation to really improve the nutrition status. So in summary, biofortification is, like Lawrence said, right there in front of our eyes. It is very complementary to food fortification. If we can work together, we can do a lot of service to the mankind. So over to you, Andres.
Thanks, Arun. I think that was a great pledge for biofortification. I've seen some of these successes in the most rural and impoverished regions where people really benefited from these crops with additional nutrients in there. Let me shift gears now and come to Valerie Gugliani. She is WFP Assistant Executive Director since January 2018, and as a friend of a partner and a partner of the World Food Program for the Peace Nobel Prize 2020. And this said, you are leading the program and policy development at the World Food Program, and social protection, inclusion, that includes the school meal program, that includes the very innovative cash transfer programs, women empowerment, and I could go on, because the WFP is really the front end in fighting hunger. And in your former assignments, you have been responsible for East and Central Africa, some of the really complex and challenging engagements of the World Food Program. And before that, you have worked for the US government among assignments, USAID. This said, Valerie, I mean, what is the World Food Program bringing to the table when it comes to fortification, and what are your opening statements? Thanks.
Well, thank you so much, Andreas, and thanks to GAIN and all of the panelists for making the summit a reality. I think that COVID-19 has shown us very clearly that we need to change the way we engage, but it's also helped us to understand that we really need to be advocating for good nutrition and healthy diets as a priority for governments and the private sector. And getting nutrition right is not just the recipe for saving lives, but it's also that critical investment in the future. At the World Food Program, we've been working with partners to ensure a healthy and diverse diet for all, but we realize and we recognize that 3 billion people can't afford healthy diets. And for 50 years, we've been using life-saving fortified foods to prevent and address malnutrition with a focus on priority groups. But fortification really is a very powerful tool to address these broader micronutrient deficiencies in entire populations. And that's why when we provide assistance, we fortify the staples that we buy and that we use in our food basket. And that's, that's not small potatoes. We buy nearly 1 million metric tons of wheat flour a year, about a fifth of that amount in vegetable oil. And ensuring that it's fortified is doing the right thing by way of the populations that we serve. But clearly, there's a much bigger impact that comes when fortified foods are part of the social safety nets and social protection systems that governments roll out, and that potential that fortification has on lives and livelihoods of the most vulnerable through social safety nets like school feeding programs are the most efficient ways to reach large numbers of people. To help make that happen, we work as advisors at the national level. We support governments end to end to implement fortification as part of their programs, starting from advocacy, communications, education, establishment of national norms and standards and policies, but also action research on the impact and the feasibility. And that becomes absolutely key. And this is really important to also then support in the actual integration of these fortified foods within those government programs. And we were talking before about India. In India, we've been supporting the development and rollout of a pilot to integrate fortified rice in 15 states and 3 national safety nets. And And the piloting in 5 of the states is something that the government asked WFP to take on. That impacts 45 million people. But as we've heard, rolling this out more broadly when the testing is finished has the possibility to be impacting 800 million children. So huge there. Private sector is also absolutely key. At the local level, our engagement ensures helping local private sector establish mills and blending capacity to invest in that capacity so we can buy from them closer to the people we serve, but also at the global level through partnerships with many of the members of this panel, organizations like DSM and others, to get fortified foods into retail markets. So this really requires all hands on deck, and this is the kind of engagement that is needed to make that happen. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Valerie. I think that was a comprehensive overview what WFP is doing, and I like that you underscore the cross-sectoral partnerships. In my former life, when I was with private sector, the WFP colleagues at the ground were in each and every of these workshops. And also for the mills, it was very important that you were among the first buyers of fortified food, for the pioneers that stepped up on fortification. I think you underscored the interest we also have as an organization at the Gates Foundation to look deeper into social safety nets as a channel for targeted delivery of fortified foods. And I think there's more work to be done on streamlining the purchasing and also the quality assurance in these programs of fortified foods. Also ambitious fortified foods and innovative ones like double fortified salt. Let me move on to Dr. Agnes Kalibata, the UN Secretary General Special Envoy on the UN Food Systems Summit in 2021. A very important milestone for the nutrition community. And she is responsible for the outreach and cooperation with key leaders, including governments, to make the summit a success and lead into the decade of action to improve food systems around the world. Dr. Kalibata has served as the president of the Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa, and she was Rwanda's Minister of Agriculture and Animal Resources from 2008 to 14. She holds several honorary doctorates and won in 2012 the Africa Food Prize. We are delighted to have you. Can you give us a little bit of an intro on the Food Systems Summit and the role fortification and biofortification has in there?
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me to participate in this. One of the key failures of our food systems today probably is what we are discussing today, the micronutrient deficiency that we see across the board. 2 billion people across the board are suffering from one or the other form of micronutrient deficiency. And the challenge is the people that need this the most are the people that don't have access to it. So the beauty about what we are discussing today, the role of fortification, industrial fortification, and biofortification, is the ability to reach millions of people and that have no other capability to get these nutrients. And again, some examples we are given, very good examples we are given, whether it's the example that you gave on Rwanda, where millions of people that we have over, at the time of that program, over 40% of the population had micronutrient deficiency of one form or another. So the program, actually, when this was introduced with your support and the support of Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, it was rolled out countrywide. And the beauty of biofortification has to be that rolled out at huge scale to be able to have the impact that where the people that need it will get it. But another example is then the work with World Food Programme and the DSM, where industrial biofortification, as we have seen again in Rwanda, efforts, lots of partners come together and decide to take on a huge undertaking, where in this case, again, the issue of micronutrient deficiency is being addressed by the government itself, by World Food Programme, by IFC, and by DSM and the United Kingdom government, where these partnerships went into industrial production of food that is fortified, so that millions of people again that are suffering can have the opportunity to have to have appropriate micronutrients. The implication for the Food Systems Summit. The Food Systems Summit is looking at game-changing ideas, and this particular track that we are interested in is actually chaired by Lawrence himself. And ideas that are impacting how we might be able to reach millions of people with micronutrients need to find their way to this action track. We are going to need, once those ideas find themselves into that action track, we are going to need and to engage governments around within the food systems dialogues that we are having. We are going to engage everybody in terms of the science, put them to pressure test them through the science of the summit that is happening. But really at the end of the day, when those ideas are put on the table, there's a huge opportunity to have international level, global level buy-in, and to reach millions of people that are now currently challenged by micronutrients. So yes, the Food Systems Summit offers a huge opportunity for ideas to come forward, but it also offers huge opportunity for global buy-in when these ideas do come forward.
Great, thank you so much. I think that was a great pledge for the Food Systems Summit, and also put fortification in a context where, I mean, governments frame markets so as to deliver better nutrition, and nutritious foods becomes the new norm after these systems have been re-engineered. I think that's an example to really be further discussed. With Lawrence, I think the right person is leading that stream. Carla Montesi from the European Commission is director there for development and cooperation. We are very pleased to have you. She has been responsible for the Directorate Planet and Prosperity since 2018, and was in charge for investment facilities and the implementation of external dimensions of the EU digital agenda and the Green Deal. Before that, she was director for Western and Central Africa, and had diverse responsibilities in the field of EU external policy and development and humanitarian affairs. Carla, the EU and the Commission have been stepping up in the recent years on nutrition, I think very purposefully. I've witnessed that myself also at the country level. There was a lot of interest from the EU delegations in helping with nutrition. Can you give us a perspective where that journey is leading you likely?
Thank you, Andres, and hello to everyone. It's a pleasure for me to join you at this summit and this panel. Let me say that at the European Commission, we are convinced that food fortification is an important component of an holistic food system approach to fight malnutrition that remain an important priority also for the European Union as one priority to accelerate the progress towards the SDGs. Unfortunately, as was already said, hunger and malnutrition are on the rise again for the first time in decades. And unfortunately, the COVID global pandemic is putting even more pressure on food and nutrition security. So we are working with our partner countries to try to reverse these trends through different modalities. Could be by promoting innovation in agriculture, by investing in sustainable value chain, by partnering with the private sector that, as Arun just said, is a key player in the transition towards the sustainable food system. Allow me to recall the ambitious commitment that the European Union has taken to support the partner countries in reducing the number of stranded children, and the pledging to invest 3.5 billion by 2020 to improve nutrition in partner countries. Let me say that we have been tracking the progress on this commitment annually, and at this stage we are already met our financial commitment, but of course we need to scale up efforts and the partnership to reduce stunting and other forms of malnutrition. Now, we know, it was already said, that in many countries we are facing complex challenges in reducing malnutrition. So it's clear that the food fortification can provide an immediate solution to fill the nutrition gap. Our approach on this is we use industrial fortification, nutrition sensitive agriculture, and also in emerging situation where point of use fortification. In all this, the priorities for the local production of fortified food, because it's at the same time also a great opportunity to create jobs for young people and women. So as you mentioned, in the last years, we have scaling up our effort also in financing several industrial food fortification projects, but also nutrient enriched crop projects, where we are working with different partners, NGOs, government, university, and the UN agency to make fortified food available for the ones that we need them most. And all this using different modalities that were already mentioned by previous speakers, that could be, of course, scaling up nutrient-enriched crop through production and market availability of seeds, to finance small and medium enterprise producer, or to strengthen regional market and the trade facilitation of fortified food, or empowerment, ensuring the empowerment of women producers, but also, I would say, integrate fortified food in all the social protection program that we are supporting also in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic, but also enhancing digital technology and the knowledge management. All this will add also the support to the promotion of appropriate regulatory framework or capacity building or the monitoring system. But let me just underline that all this, keeping in mind that food fortification measures should be, in our view, always be adapted to the local context and designed to address first the causes of the macronutrient deficiency. So I stop here and ready to answer, to participate in the debate. And let me take this opportunity to congratulate Lawrence and the team to have succeeded to organize this global summit also in these difficult circumstances. So over to you, Andres. Many thanks.
Thanks so much. I think that was a great statement underscoring that fortification is really about local food, and it's a local solution where nutrition sovereignty is taken in the hand at the country level. Let me really thank the European Commission and also other stakeholders in Europe for the continuous contributions over the last years, including member states and the private sector. So we have seen a lot of commitment, and we hope we can continue that great partnership with you in the course of the coming years. Let me now go to Dr. Martin Friedrin, the Director of Agriculture and Agro-Industry in the African Development Bank. He is a plant scientist for 27 years and worked on molecular breeding of cassava. He's a Rockefeller Foundation fellow. He has worked in various institutes, including also in a cassava project funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, where he was the project director and chief technical advisor to the Minister of Agriculture in Nigeria. Martin, what would you like to tell us about fortification and the prospects in the areas you work in?
Thank you very much, Andreas, and I would like to thank also Lawrence and Henrietta and Gain for inviting us to the Global Summit on Food Fortification. It's good to see fellow panelists, Dr. Kalibata and also Arun and many others. The African Development Bank invests in economic development of its 54 member countries. So we invest in infrastructure, we invest in better governance, but we also recognize that we need to also invest in what we call gray matter infrastructure. That is the well-being of the next generation, because stunted children leads to stunted economies. And as Lawrence has always shown so well, you know, the malnutrition in the first 1,000 days of a child has incredible, consequences for the child and also for the economy. So the bank has a number of policies and strategies and also partnerships that addresses malnutrition, especially with respect to biofortification and food fortification. The first is what we call the multi-sectoral nutrition action plan 2018 to 2025. It aims to catalyze nutrition smart investments to support a 40% reduction in stunting across the continent, with a core focus on investing and the promotion of safe, diverse, and nutritious foods. We also have the bank's Feed Africa strategy. That is a bold and an ambitious strategy to reduce malnutrition and poverty and hunger on the continent. And as part of the strategy, we have what we call the Technologies for African Agricultural Transformation, or TAT. TAT actually promotes biofortification, two key commodities. There's high iron beans and also orange flesh sweet potatoes. We also work closely with GAIN, especially in GAIN's marketplace for nutritious foods. And even though it's a new initiative we've started, but what we look forward to supporting some of the SMEs that GAIN is working with and helping to produce nutritious foods. The bank also hosts the African Leaders for Nutrition Initiative, funded by the Gates Foundation. Thank you, Andres, for your support there. And here we support, we have global champions, and we also have heads of states that helps advocate, with countries on the need, to invest, in child nutrition. We, as you know, also have a scorecard as part of the ALN, the Nutrition Initiative. We have a scorecard that actually assesses each country how they're doing, with respect to nutrition. We also work very closely with the AU, as well the AU Development Agency and NEPAD to promote, regional adoption of policies that actually help to improve nutrition, especially with respect to how much the country is spending on nutrition. But to end, I'd just like to give you a few examples of what the bank is doing in 3 countries. For example, in Ethiopia, we have launched what we call the multi-sector approach for reducing stunting, whereby we help farmers growing high iron beans, cowpeas, mung beans, high quality protein, maize, orange flesh sweet potatoes, camelina, amaranth, and other vegetables. We support them with irrigation, with the inputs to ensure that these farmers actually can produce a quality product and also sell it. And then also in Cote d'Ivoire, in the agro-industrial projects in the northern part of Cote d'Ivoire, we also promote biofortification with the farmers there, just to ensure that the country has, high zinc maize and also high iron, beans and orange flesh sweet potatoes, on a much larger scale. And finally, in Niger, one of the countries of the Sahelian, poverty and malnutrition is very rampant. We have the resilience and reinforcement of nutrition projects that seeks to improve, access to nutritious food, a more diverse food basket for the populations of countries. Let me just stop here for now. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Martin. That was very concrete. In interest of time, I move swiftly to Axton, last but not least, representing the private sector here at the table. I personally feel a very important constituency in fortification. He's director of PT Indo Foods in Indonesia, a leading food company which produces a variety of products, including noodles, dairy, and edible oil. He serves as a co-chair of Scaling Up Nutrition. Axton, I know you have been a champion in Indonesia. We met often in Indonesia in my former life, and I'm so glad you kind of always paved the way for not only for your company, but also for the whole sector there. Can you tell us a little bit about the role the private sector plays in fortification and how you see that in the Indonesian context?
Thank you so much for the invitation once again. Thank you, Andreas. I will try to break it down to why this is important and how private sector can be part of a thing, and also showcase what Indonesia have been doing as well. So one of the earliest successful national policies recorded is in 1922, that's about 100 years ago, which Switzerland actually iodizes salt to solve a severe iodine deficiency problem. And with that, now iodizing salt is one of the most common forms of fortification, with over being done in over 160 countries. And then in developing countries as well, fortifying the staple foods and condiments have led to virtual elimination of the micronutrient deficiency disease such as goiter and beriberi, and flour fortification of iron and folic acid has also led to decrease in iron deficiency anemia and increase in folate status in over a dozen developing countries. How can we actually replicate that into the developing countries? The developing and the lower income countries as well. So with 1.5 million people affected by hidden hunger, we definitely need to find a solution that's fast and furious. So food fortification, for one, is one of the best investments in terms of cost effectiveness. The increment cost per person per year is about 5 US cents for iodine salt and 12 US cents for wheat and maize, fortified with iron and folic acid, with a lifetime cost of less than $15 for the two fortified commodities as well. And for the weighted average basis, every $1 invested in fortification generates $27 in economic return from adverse diseases, improve earnings, and also enhance work productivity for the state. So being that, being part of the scaling up nutrition movement through the business network has allowed me to learn and embrace all actors, UN network, NGOs, civil society, academia, and also the donors, and be part of a solution that is country-led. A political will of the government will unify all stakeholders to have a shared goal to end all forms of malnutrition. And the effectiveness of fortification national programs is not only the determining factor of the biological efficacy of the fortified food, but also the effective and sustainable implementations, improving coverage and quality of delivery, monitoring quality and compliance, and of course the measuring progress of national programs as well. So I would now coming back to Indonesia, using Indonesia as an example, we have a long history of large-scale fortification. Salt fortification since 94, voluntary flour fortification led by Bogasari flour mill in 98, which becomes mandatory in 2003. Vitamin A fortification of cooking oil since 2012, and now last year became mandatory. And the most exciting one is in 2019, the government developed a rice with fortification to be distributed through non-cash food aid to the underprivileged population. So of course we understand that the whole COVID situation has caused social distancing measures to have displaced a lot of millions of people's jobs. And that actually leaves a lot of households sacrificing quality and quantity of food, good consumptions. And of course, world trade is disrupted as well. And in Indonesia, it's no different. So this year, in the beginning of the pandemic, I think Indonesia was definitely faced with a lot of supply chain issues, disruptions due to countries and borders lockdown. And this affected the food supply, for one, and also the micronutrient premix supply. So the Minister of Industry actually issued a relaxation of the mandatory fortification of wheat flour and cooking oil from the period of April till next month. But in keeping in the industry's commitment to the government to reduce malnutrition, despite the relaxation of rules, such companies such as Bogasari and the Bimoli edible cooking oil and the rest of the industry in Indonesia has kept with the commitments to continue to fortification of the staple foods. So an ending note is like food fortification has already been well established since 1922, and the strategies and the address it's a good way to address malnutrition deficiencies in vulnerable populations. The private sector, for one, and the government can work together through appropriate selection and understanding of food vehicles that are consumed at large, coupled with the effective compliance mechanism and monitoring, can be leveraged as a solution to reduce and prevent micronutrient deficiency worldwide. So I think I'll end it at that. I think we'll continue with the discussion.
Yeah, I'm afraid we have to be a bit creative with the discussion because I see we are running out of time, but I think you made your statements very forcefully and comprehensive. Let me try to be a bit creative and do a bit of a snapshot. Can you answer me my questions in one word, maybe? What is needed to scale up? And you can kind of put forward one word. I think that's what the participants will take home. And may I start with Inoshi? What does it take in India to scale up? What would be your one word on that?
I mean, the first thing I would say would be political will, because if you've got that, then it's like so easy to, you know, get all the resources and all the places and everything in place.
Great, political will. Exton, you are next on my screen here. What would you say is the one word to take home for scaling up?
For me, it's partnerships.
Ah.
I think, you know, how the government and everyone can be partners and scale it up together.
Okay, great. Valerie, may I ask you, what do you think is the one word the WFP would like to grave in stone here?
Investment. This is the
investment. Now I need to change gears here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Arun, your one word.
I would say partnerships and collaborations. Yep.
Okay, then I go to Kara.
Sorry, Andreas, to who? To me.
Yes, please.
Okay, so for me, it's the same political will with the government, engagement from the government, but also the great contribution from the private sector that will be the key to help us in supporting all the different partners.
Fantastic. And Martin, what would be your take home?
I would say scaling diversified food basket. We need to get people to grow more biofortified food and also eat vegetables and other foods. Yeah.
Oh, the diversified food basket is not too far from the food system. So Agnes, what would you like to take us home?
I think a lot of it has been said, so I'll use one word to summarize all that: leadership. We will need leadership at government level. We need leadership at private sector level, and we need leadership at community level and institutional level. So leadership and prioritization of this agenda is going to be very critical.
Fantastic. Thanks for your flexibility in terms of timing. I think it's great we have been respectful for the upcoming, very interesting elements of the launch of the summit. And this said, I hope that all of you in the audience will stay for the upcoming next sessions. And I pass over to, I think, Lawrence again.
Thank you, Andreas, and panel. What a great panel, Andreas. Great moderation and a fantastic last question, answered in one sentence or less. I learned a lot, and with my action track #1 hat on, I'm noting rice fortification from Inoshi in India over the next 4 to 5 years. I'm noticing Valerie, Carla, and yourself, Andreas, all mention linking social protection programs, which my World Bank colleagues tell me are engaging 1.8 billion people worldwide, engaging those programs in getting more fortified foods into those programs. And again, the potential for biofortified foods to go to scale with the example from Rwanda. And Axton, I love, there's lots of F's in this space: financing, food, fortification. You've introduced 2 more. Fast and furious. I love that. And you're quite right too, because as you said, fortification's been around for 100 years or more. So we need to speed the process up. And I thought Agnes's point right at the end was perfect: leadership. One of the things that didn't come up in your session was innovation. And I'd like us now to change gears a little bit and go to the next panel. And it's pretty clear that I think success in scaling requires constant innovation. And that's kind of the topic of the next panel. And our moderator is Saskia Ozendaal. And Saskia is the executive director of the Micronutrient Forum. She has an impressive record of research, practice, and policy work with the public and the private sectors. And she's also a visiting associate professor of nutrition at Wageningen University. Saskia, over to you.
Thank you, Lawrence. And I'm at the Micronutrient Forum, we're very honored actually to co-host the second Global Summit on Food Fortification together with GAIN and Harvest Plus. And because we know that food fortification and biofortification, as has been said, are two of the important public health strategies to address micronutrient malnutrition. And with COVID-19 further compromising people's access to healthy diets, the further scale up of food fortification and biofortification has become even more important, I think, as one way to ensure that people receive the micronutrients they need for healthy and productive lives. However, in order for these interventions to reach their full potential, we require innovations that can help overcome barriers to progress for both fortification as well as for biofortification. So in this current panel, we have 30 minutes to discuss some of the key opportunities in large-scale food fortification and biofortification. There is more investment and more attention needed to maximize impact. And we will hear from our panelists about innovations that are on the horizon and that have the potential to accelerate progress. So we have a stellar panel for you today, whom I will now briefly introduce. And then we will ask them to introduce the topic to you. The first speaker is Benjami Mkambulwa. He is the program lead for food fortification at the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition at GAIN. And Benjami also serves on the executive management team of the Food Fortification Initiative and the board of the Iodine Global Network. And I would like to ask Benjami, similar to all of the other panelists, now to first have a brief introduction for us on how innovations can help to accelerate progress on fortification. Benjami.
Thank you very much, Saskia. So what I'm going to try and do over the next 5 minutes or so is to run through slides very quickly, which will show us progress in terms of where we have food fortification programs around the world, countries which could benefit from fortification programs, the challenges we have within food fortification programs, and then look ahead to the priorities, including the innovations that Saskia asked about. So at present, there are 85 countries, globally, where by law you have to fortify grains. That's either wheat, maize, or flour. At the end of 2019, the Food Fortification Initiative looked at globally the volume of maize that's in the volume of grains that are industrially fortified, and that comes up to 570 million tons. But out of that, only 19% is actually fortified, 30% each for maize and wheat, but actually only 1% of rice. So that's a long way away from scale up. Based on a paper that I worked on together with 8 other experts this year, we estimate that there is 40 countries who could actually benefit from fortification of grains. And that's on the basis of the prevalence of micronutrient deficiencies in those countries and the presence of consumption, where we could fortify at scale. With regard to progress on standardization, this is the most advanced. We have 145 countries that have programs, 128 of them on a mandatory basis. But if you look at the iodine nutrition scorecard, which the Iodine Global Network published in June this year, you will find that 20 countries still are deficient in, they have insufficient intakes of iodine. So in those 20 countries, some have programs, some don't have. So we still have a long way away to reach iodine nutrition in these 20 countries. The situation on oil is a little behind both grains and salts. We have 36 countries with mandatory and voluntary programs, and we estimate that 70 more countries could benefit from new programs. So the two biggest issues that we face in fortification programs that are currently up and running are to do with compliance of those programs, but also the coverage. So this analysis is pooled data or aggregated data, from various coverage surveys that were done using the Fortification Assessment Coverage Toolkit. And if you look at the case of salt, for example, across those 21 surveys, we found that 99% of households actually consume salt, so almost universal consumption of salt. And 95% of the households actually consumes salt that comes from centralized production facilities. So that salt is fortifiable. But when actually you measure the salt, we found that 65% of the salt is fortified, but only 31% is fortified according to the minimum standards. So what this shows is that programs have two key issues. One, to do with coverage, so being able to reach everybody, and then secondly, fortifying at the quality required. So to sum up, there is three key things that we need to do, going forward. One, like I've already said, there's a number of countries where there is no fortification happening, where we need to fortify, or where programs are voluntary and we need to make those programs mandatory. We do have challenges around compliance and coverage. And this is really where we need to innovate across systems, across new food vehicles, but also working on with other interventions. For example, the complements between food fortification and biofortification. And both Ekin is going to speak to the complementarity between those two, and Alok is going to talk about the innovations in detail. And then lastly, we also need to do more evaluations across programs so that we inform, course correction, and also we have evidence-based, decision-making to improve those programs. But for us to address these three priorities, we really need to mobilize investment, to achieve our objectives. So I will stop there and hand over back to Saskia. Thank you.
Thank you, Penjani, and I think you're right that the major challenges are in making sure that we have innovative monitoring systems that allow us to see how we can further improve compliance and coverage and learn lessons learned. So our next speaker, whom you already was briefly introduced by Penjani, is Ekin Birol, and she's the Director of Impact and Strategies at Harvest Plus. So she leads the research at Harvest Plus to inform the design of targeted, cost-effective, sustainable and scalable biofortification interventions, as well as the monitoring and evaluation and knowledge mobilization functions at Harvest Plus. So Ekin, biofortification in itself is a relatively new innovation, definitely compared to large-scale food fortification. And could you give us a brief progress update and explain also which of the micronutrient gaps in particularly biofortification strives to fill in the current food systems? And also maybe reflect a little bit on Harvest Plus strategy to scale up biofortification. Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much, Saskia. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Firstly, I would like to congratulate the centennial anniversary of fortification. As Penjani said, it's been 100 years, started in 1920 in the USA, and it has caused significant amount of impact in both developed and developing countries and affected generations and will continue to impact generations to come. So many congratulations. But as it's been said, if the large-scale food fortification agenda is unfinished, and I would say the biofortification agenda has just been written. We have a long way to go. In 1990s, it was an idea that came about to complement fortification in areas where fortified foods were not reaching, especially the rural poor who consume what they produce. In 2000s, the development of biofortified crops have started. It's been very promising development since then, having released about 370 varieties of 11 staple crops across 40 continents. And in 2010, about only a decade ago, the delivery programs have started, such as the one in Rwanda, as Arun had talked about and Agnes Kalibata had talked about in the earlier panel. So as I mentioned, biofortification come about specifically to fill the micronutrient gaps where industrial fortification couldn't. And its aim, just like fortification, is to improve the micronutrient content of commonly consumed foods. In the case of fortification, is commonly purchased foods that people don't need to change their behavior for, that are easily accessible, easily affordable for all members in the community, regardless of their socioeconomic status. And similarly, in the case of biofortification, the aim was to increase the micronutrient content of commonly produced and consumed foods by rural households. So the entry point within the food supply chain and within the food systems for biofortification is agriculture, whereas for fortification, it is further up in the value chain, it's the food processing. So that's how they are complementary. So as I said, biofortification targets rural poor, and delivery efforts that started around 10 years ago, as I mentioned, have reached an estimated 50 million rural household members and across 20 countries. That is joint efforts by various CGIAR centers, including Harvest Plus and of course the International Potato Center. In addition to these, several other countries have started doing biofortification on their own accord, taking on biofortification, having seen the value in that as proven by the efficacy, cost effectiveness, consumer and farmer acceptance evidence. And as well as civil society organizations like World Vision, UN organizations like FAO are also taking on biofortification. So total number of biofortification, active biofortification programs are about 40 at the moment. But then again, these programs still need to be scaled. As Dr. Kalibata has already mentioned, the biofortification programs should be scaled countrywide for their potential to be realized, for their impact potential to be realized. There's been great development in that 24 countries, low and middle income countries, have included biofortification in their agriculture, nutrition, or food systems agendas or plans or strategies. One excellent example is, for example, in India, the legislation is passed for minimum breeding standards for zinc and iron for permalet. And another more recent example is the Indian Prime Minister Modi on October 16 on World Food Day declared biofortification as an effective intervention for improving the micronutrient deficiency of India's population and dedicated 17 varieties of biofortified foods, biofortified crops to the nation. So there's a need to, as I mentioned, learn from these delivery efforts as well as these policy efforts and investments by UN organizations, as well as increasing investment by international financial organizations in institutions such as the World Bank, African Development Bank, IFAD, which are also increasingly investing in biofortification as they set themselves targets for nutrition outcomes, especially nutrition outcomes of their agriculture programs. So there's as I said, there's a need for commitment from all of these actors for biofortification to be scaled. And there's no time better than now when we are at the crossroads and we're faced with so many challenges. One of them is the COVID challenge, as has been mentioned before. It highlighted not only the need to have need to have micronutrients in diets to have strengthened immune systems, but also the fragility of local food systems, especially if they're not producing micronutrient-enriched foods themselves. So reducing incomes and with disruptions to food systems, several sources of micronutrient foods have become either too expensive or inaccessible to the food. The second crisis is the climate change. We know that it's not only causing increased variability in production, but it's also reducing the micronutrient content of key staples eaten by rural poor. In addition to that, we know that biofortified crops piggybacking on the most improved varieties at the CGI, our International Agricultural Research Centers, they are climate resilient and high yielding. So they can improve not only nutrition resilience, but also food, increase in food security in rural areas. The third one is want to mention the systemic inequities. As we know, within food systems, access to nutritious food is not equitable across countries, within countries, even within households when men and boys are often giving animal source foods when or if they are available. But both biofortification and fortification, by targeting foodstuff, by targeting vehicles that are consumed by all within a household or within a country, regardless of their gender or their income or social status, giving an opportunity for these people to have some at least minimum level of micronutrients in their diets through the food that they consume day in, day out. Just want to complete by saying that Andreas in the previous session mentioned that there is no silver bullet, and I could not agree more. Neither biofortification or fortification together or individually are silver bullets, but our research, both from fortification and biofortification, show that together, especially together, when we get together, as Henrietta Iv said, they provide a golden opportunity for improving micronutrient intakes, especially of the poor, and cost effectively, sustainably, and with minimum behavior change. So those are my remarks for now. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Eken. And your comments on biofortification agenda that has actually just been written and is now ready to scale up made me think of the founding father of Harvest Plus, Dr. Howard Bowie, who is also the chair of the board of the Micronutrient Forum and a World Food Prize winner, similar to Lawrence Haddad, who's also on this call. And I think he is the perfect example demonstrating that if you are stubbornly pursuing a dream of an innovation, that you can actually overcome technical barriers, skepticism, funding challenges, and eventually reach a stage where you can have an impact on the lives of millions and millions. So I think that's a perfect example of what innovations can achieve in this field. So thank you. So our next panelist is Dr. Alok Ranjan, and he's the regional lead for nutrition in the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation for the foundation's nutrition work in India, Bangladesh, Indonesia, and South Asia. Alok is a medical doctor and has over 15 years of experience in the areas of public health and nutrition across public health research, polio eradication, routine immunization, child health, maternal health, emergency health, and various aspects of nutrition. So Alok, maybe you can start explaining to the audience what are the various innovations that you feel would be relevant for a country such as India to scale up fortification for various staples.
Thank you, Saskia, and good day everyone in different parts of the world. And thanks to the organizers of the summit for having me here on the panel. Today, I'm kind of recollecting the 2015 Future Fortified Summit in Arusha, where a lot of government officials from India, from the government of India, and a lot of state officials participated in that summit. And post that, we have seen an unprecedented progress in India in terms of the large-scale food fortification, majorly driven by the Food Safety and Standards Authority of India, FSSAI, which was very well presented by Inushi in the previous session. I'll go back to innovation question that Saskia, you asked from two perspectives. What has been some of the innovations in last 3 to 4 years, which I feel has driven the programming here, and going ahead, what are the kind of things which would be very critical? If I reflect back, I think two important critical innovations has been one, the Food Fortification Resource Center, which like Inoshi heads that whole unit under the FSSAI, and how it has been doing this entire coordination across ministries, states, industries, working as a resource hub which provides information on various aspects and input on all the possible aspects around fortification to various stakeholders, government system as well as the industry. The second big component which I would call out as an innovative approach by the government in terms of this enabling environment has been the Eat Right India initiative, which was launched last year. and where there is a whole focus on looking at safe, sustainable, healthy, and mindful eating. And the fact that large-scale food fortification is an integral part of that vision, it provides, again, an unprecedented opportunity to scale fortification within the broader food systems approach. So just wanted to call out these two as what I say has been really innovative ways in which the Government of India, FSSAI, has been driving fortification. Now, going ahead in terms of fortification, I would pick it up from where Pinjani left in his presentation. And I would mainly talk around three approaches. First being looking at innovations around better products and how that can be helpful. For example, in India, there is a huge traction around the double fortified salt work. You heard in the previous session also reference to the large opportunity we have around the social safety net programs in India's context. When we look at that, one concern has been the organoleptic challenge that comes with the double fortified salts current premix formulation. And can we somehow end up developing a more forgiving premix that will not be as reactive to the lower quality of salt compared to what current premix requires? Also looking at, simultaneously reducing the pressure on the QA QC system and resulting in an overall improved sensory profile for the audience as well, the consumers as well. Along with that, looking at newer vehicles, like looking at multiple fortifications on salt and other things. These are all innovations around the product, one aspect. Second aspect, I would like to focus around the innovation around the digitization of the quality assurance and quality compliance, something that came up in terms of quality during a lot of reference in the last discussion. To date, majority of the quality improvement in fortification has been largely achieved through accreditation services of premix and traditional capacity building of industry labs and the government regulators. Can we move towards the concept of producing more compliance data within industry, sharing that information with government and downstream buyers, incentivizing participation of other millers through the transparency of data, such opportunities to redesign the entire QA/QC aspect of fortification so as to become a decentralized public-private system-based with shared interest and incentive for the private sector to take part in it, can be really transformational. And this would need a different approach in different states, different countries. For example, like if you look at from like periodic lab analysis that happens around samples, can we move towards use of devices like eye checks and having automatic uploading of these results to having a direct uploading of fortification data quality through industry? Looking at no national level database and paper records, can we move towards utilization of Fortify MIS and other national level database mechanisms that could be there? These on the government side. In the industry side, can we look at from premix currently like the certificate of authenticity, which is used as a validation? Can we move towards a blockchain enabled, cloud enabled electronic dosifier usage mechanism? Can we move towards a place where even the internal database from the industry, it moves through the whole blockchain channel from top to bottom? So there can be a huge opportunity of looking at the quality perspective from this end-to-end, the entire value chain, and connecting it from that perspective, which reduces a lot of redundancies and which becomes a kind of a unifier for data across industry as well as what government looks at. And last component around innovation I would see would be in terms of looking at innovative financing. We have the opportunity of the Nutrition for Growth Summit, the Food System Summit coming up, and looking at the innovative financing around nutrition would be quite critical, especially when we see that as Government of India is looking at the aspiration of covering up all the social safety net programs, covering up the mandating the fortification. In that scenario, there is a lot of TA support that will be required at the national level in all the states across the country, and for partners to have resources to respond to that, it will require more financing. And at the same point of time, can we be innovative in terms of how we measure the entire work around fortification? Over.
Thank you, Alok, and thank you for giving such a comprehensive response all along the value chain. I particularly also thought that your thoughts about how innovations are also required more at the enabling environment level, I thought were very good to bring into this discussion on how can we make sure that that there are resource centers available, like go-to shops or go-to hubs for people working in this field to overcome barriers. And obviously the technical work that has been, that I think India has been pioneering in the development of double fortified and even triple fortified salt, as you mentioned, which is really the basis, I think, of all the innovations we are talking about when it comes to food fortification and biofortification. So we have very little time left in this panel, unfortunately, but I still have 3 questions for each panelist, one, that I would like to ask you to respond to very quickly. And I will start in the reverse order now. So I will start with Alok. The first, just to give a very brief response to, you talked about some of the obstacles and the potential innovations to overcome those obstacles, but can you also share in brief what you think are the few key enablers and barriers for these innovations to really work in a country?
Thanks, Saskia. And I'll be very brief in that. So in terms of the enablers, I would say what you have already heard in this and the previous session, the social safety net program that she talked about, that Andreas talked about, that provides a huge opportunity. And there are different public distribution system, ICDS program, as well as the midday meal, and government is looking at those in a big way. The second big enabler, I think, is the partner coordination. The entire development sector, all the stakeholders have come together as a Poshtik network, and they are jointly envisioning the roadmap for each of these vehicles going ahead. That brings a very strong unity and convergence in terms of how they complement each other. And the third fact is the entire approach of the government, which is the most critical here, owned and leading this whole process with what they call 3E: engage, excite, and enable the various stakeholders. In terms of the barrier, I think the barriers are quite similar. I think when I said the social safety net programs, if we don't ensure the quality of what is provided in that, the QA QC component becomes so important because there can be a huge backsliding if we don't ensure the quality of what goes into those systems. When we talk about all the stakeholders and the Poshtik network, they have been working very strongly together over the last 3 to 4 years. And if issues of egos and logos creep up into this as this becomes a bigger and bigger mandate, I think it can again lead to a lot of backslide. That is a second barrier, and touchwood, I think the partner coordination here is amazing. And third is in terms of the fact that everyone is looking as a long-term scale-up. Government is pushing for that and not pushing for small boutique pilots and silos. I think that's another aspect that we all need to start looking towards. COVID, for sure, can be a massive barrier, but I would say it can be a massive enabler as well, where it pushes everyone to look at things from the technology perspective, digital perspective, and kind of do a refresh in or reboot the entire system in many things which are broken and not functioning. Over.
Thank you. And I would also like to ask, to come back to Eke now with a final question. What are some of the innovative technologies, tools, and mechanisms that Harvest Plus is currently using or recommending for the scale-up of biofortification, Eke?
Thank you so much. I'll also be brief and say the first thing that we're testing and learning from is digital tools. We recently started working with Precision Agriculture for Development, where we're working together to reach hundreds and thousands of farmers with information about biofortified varieties, zinc wheat in this case, and where to find the seed and how to plant, the agronomic training that goes with it through information, providing information on their phone, and which is especially good given the COVID context we're all facing at the moment. Another digital tool is we've been testing apps like Uber for biofortification, and the apps to link farmers to input suppliers to see where they can find high quality biofortified planting material, as well as to link aggregators and others further along the supply chain to farmers to see where they can procure biofortified outputs, that's of the quality and the variety and the crop that they want, if in case the farmers have some supply that they'd like to sell. So we have examples of biofortified stat in Nigeria, an app we've been testing, and biofortificados in Colombia. The other innovation is that we are also trying to work with SMEs, local SMEs, because COVID context made it so visible, as Alok has said, that is important to strengthen the local food system, and SME is strengthening them not only for strengthening the food system to deliver healthier diets, but also to strengthen the local economies and the income opportunities. So we've been working with SMEs, and I also have 3 E's, Alok, to encourage, enable, and empower them through innovative financial mechanisms, as well as capacity strengthening opportunities, such as how to segregate biofortified versus non-biofortified, what kind of healthy products to make from biofortified ingredients. So I also want to mention that even though we are working within the local context in rural areas, we're also thinking about further up in the value chain and urban consumers as potential demand pull and inspirational aspects, of course, and we're also testing blockchain for some of our crops to ensure that traceability continues. And that blockchain is also important for if we want to sell to World Food Programme or other humanitarian programs. Yes, thank you very much. I think my time is up.
Thank you, Eken. And then finally, Panjani, final question to you. You mentioned about the need to mobilize investments for this unfinished agenda and food fortification. Can you briefly describe who should invest in your opinion and in what, and who bears the ongoing costs?
Thank you. So I think there's principally 3 key stakeholders that invest in fortification. So you have the national governments, investing in development of standards and legislation, or strengthening of standards and regulation, but also, investing into evaluation and monitoring of fortification programs, including some of the digital systems that Alok was talking about, and finally, investing in overall program management, themselves. So, governments do that with support from development partners, but by far, I think, and perhaps the biggest untold story is that the biggest investors in fortification are actually the private sector. So typically in a fortification program, 90% of the ongoing costs are borne by the private sector through procurement of premix, through the quality assurance and quality control processes. And if you look at the program overall, the money that's spent by governments and donors, comprise something like, 10%. So that's the beauty of fortification in terms of bearing the ongoing costs in the sense that the costs for government are relatively low. Of course, I would hasten to add that at the beginning of the program, the investment by governments or development partners it is higher because you're getting the program up and running. But as the program matures, then all the costs on an ongoing basis move to private sector. So to answer a question, perhaps how much is needed, there was a paper that was done about 2 years ago that looked at if we were to scale new programs across 25 countries over the next 10 years or so, how much would it cost? And they came up with a figure of $250 million dollars over that period. Granted, what's needed is more than those 25, and 250 million sounds like a large figure. But when we compare with the World Bank analysis that was done 4 years ago around the World Health Assembly nutrition targets, if we were to reach them, we need $70 billion over a 10-year period. Then you look at 250 million relative to that amount is small for that number of countries. So I'll stop there and hand over back to you, Saskia. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, panelists. Thank you, Panjani and Eken and Alok for your contributions. I think this in this panel, what was interesting is that similar to the previous panel, also social safety programs were mentioned as an important enabler also for innovations. And I think also in the previous session, we heard about a number of F's, and this session had a number of E's for you. So I'm not sure what kind of word we can make for that, but here we heard about engaging, energizing, encouraging, and enabling and empowerment for innovations to make sure that they work towards overcoming barriers for scale up of these 2 interventions. So with this, I will hand over to Lawrence for the final panel of this summit. Thank you.
Thank you, Saskia, and panelists for a glimpse into the future on how innovation, sometimes glamorous, often unglamorous, can help scale up fortification. That was really excellent. I now want to turn to our final panel, which is all about the L word, leadership. We've had the F's, we've had the E's, now we need the L's, national leadership for scale up. Inoshi in the first panel mentioned how relatively straightforward it was to do her work and for FSSAI to do its work because there was political leadership at the highest level. So this is our final panel on national leadership for scale up. We are very lucky to have Sean Baker moderate this session. Sean is the chief nutritionist for the United States Agency for International Development, USAID. And prior to joining USAID, he was the first director of nutrition at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And he's got over 30 years experience in global public health nutrition, including 25 years living in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. And Sean, you've got so many ministers in your panel, it must feel like a cabinet level meeting. I know you will make it a productive one. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Lawrence, for the introduction. I was reflecting on the incredibly inspiring opening remarks from Executive Director Henrietta Iv from UNICEF, the chair of the lead group of the Scale Up Nutrition Movement. I think she said that the most important thing is the political will to make this happen. And I think that was reflected in the follow-up session. And today we're really honored to have a brilliant panel of national leaders from across the globe. I'm going to start, we have 8 different panelists who will speak today. I'm going to not give all the introductions up front, but give the introductions as we ask each of the panelists to make some opening remarks. And I have the pleasure to start with the Minister of Health from Nigeria. Thank you, Honorable Minister, for joining us today. The Honorable Osaji Ihanire is the Minister of Health in Nigeria. He's a specialist in general surgery and orthopedic trauma. He attended University of Munich and holds a diploma in anesthetics from the Royal College of Surgeons of Ireland. Honorable Minister, would really thank you for joining us today and would like to pass you the floor for your opening remarks. And given the number of panelists, we'd request that you limit them to no more than 5 minutes. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. My greetings to everybody who is here today. The micronutrient deficiency is a major public health challenge in Nigeria, with anemia primarily caused by iron deficiency occurring in 68% of children under 5 and in 58% of pregnant women. Vitamin and mineral deficiencies can have serious consequences for a child's health and development. Vitamin A deficiency is the leading cause of preventable blindness in children in Nigeria. Nigeria has shown that we are capable of successfully implementing large-scale fortification programs and demonstration of the positive effects. The Universal Iodized Salt Program succeeded in reaching 98% of Nigerian households with iodized salt and led to significant reduction in iodine deficiency disorders. The government of Nigeria regulates all fortified foods manufactured, imported, exported, distributed, advertised, sold, or used in Nigeria. These regulations are enforced through the active monitoring conducted at the distribution level by the National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control, which we all know here as NAFDAC, supervised by the Ministry of Health. The national guidelines on micronutrient deficiency control in Nigeria, developed by my ministry, aims to improve implementation and coordination of a wide array of interventions to eliminate or reduce the prevalence of vitamin and mineral deficiencies. We are currently reviewing this guideline to reflect current practices. The review will include rice fortification as an intervention for control of micronutrient deficiency. The government is also developing a national food consumption and micronutrient intake survey to give government and stakeholders high quality data on the micronutrient status of different parts of the population in our country. because data, as we know, is critical to good and effective policy making, and this is a core focus of government. The COVID-19 pandemic presented challenge to good nutrition, including micronutrient consumption, the impact of the disease itself, and the response, such as a lockdown necessary at the time to contain spread of disease, may have resulted in disruption of food supply and nutrition. To tackle the probable impact of COVID-19 pandemic on the nutritional well-being of the people, the Federal Ministry of Health, in consultation with stakeholders, developed a food and nutrition response plan for COVID-19. The implementation of the plan ensured the integration of nutrition into the national COVID-19 response plan due to its relevance in supporting immune function. Our fortification intervention has experienced several challenges, these being poor compliance by manufacturers of fortified foods in some places, understanding the effectiveness of the ongoing fortification drive and achievements, the access to quality surveillance data by regulatory agencies related to ministries and departments and the general public, and poor consumer insight, since many people are not aware of the value of fortified food, and in some places, of course, the low purchasing power of consumers. One innovative approach has been the involvement of the private sector through an annual CEO forum on large-scale food fortification held in Nigeria and convened by TechnoServe in collaboration with our own Nigeria Aliko Dangote Foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and the Nigeria Industrial Policy and Competitiveness Council. This is an initiative conceived to stimulate interest in food fortification, particularly in improving quality and standards from the highest levels of government and industry. Thank you, and this is the end of the presentation.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister, in highlighting the incredible success of Nigeria and the dedication to the evidence. It's fascinating to move from a Minister of Health, who's leading this, now to a Minister of Industries from Bangladesh. So I'm very pleased to have with us today the Honorable Nurul Majid Mahmood Humayun, who is the Minister of Industries for the People's Republic of Bangladesh. He has a master's degree in political science and a Bachelor of Laws from the University of Dhaka. Honorable Minister, we really would like to have your opening remarks, and you have 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Mr. Sean Baker, Chief Nutritionist, USAID, other honorable ministers, and ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. A very good evening to all of you. It's indeed a great privilege to welcome everyone in the second Global Summit on Food Fortification. 2020 has been a difficult year. The COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted the life and livelihood of billions of people around the world, including Bangladesh. Considering the severity of the situation, Bangladesh government has introduced direct financial support for the affected people, widening social safety, net coverage for poor people, food distribution at a lower price among the poor people, as well as using large-scale food fortification as an effective way to tackle hidden hunger, vitamin and mineral deficiencies. Ladies and gentlemen, under the prudent leadership of our Honorable Prime Minister, Our Excellency Sheikh Hasina, Bangladesh has progressed immensely in economic development, food security, health and nutrition since 2010. The country is on track to achieve its national nutritional status in accordance with the global nutrition targets. Our hard work and achievements in tackling malnutrition has been globally acknowledged. We are constantly working on addressing malnutrition. The law for mandatory fortification of edible well with vitamin A was enacted in 2013 in order to address vitamin A deficiency in Bangladesh. In case of fortification of edible well in Bangladesh, packaged well represents about 35% and bulk well in drams represents 65% of the total edible well market by volume. According to the latest market survey, 95% of total packaged well is fortified, whereas only 41% of total dram well is fortified. To improve the present scenario, Ministry of Industries, GAIN, and other development and private sector partners are working together. On 7th October 2020, the Cabinet approved the Iodized Salt Act 2020. Food fortification has been included in National Food and Nutrition Security Policy, NSP 2020 in September 2020. These priorities will also be included in 8th five-year plan. Now we are planning to fortify wheat and maize flour with vitamin A and hope this will be a major steps to boost nutrition standard at a marginal level. Distinguished panelists, the government of Bangladesh is also interested to explore the use of biofortified crops to mitigate micronutrient deficiencies. Biofortified zinc rice is a very promising candidate to reduce zinc deficiency in Bangladesh, and the government of Bangladesh would be happy to promote the production and consumption of biofortified zinc rice in Bangladesh. We are also promoting Sun Business Network in a coordinated effort to addressing nutrition-related issues. Achieving the nutrition target is critical for the government to achieve the Vision 2021 SDGs and Vision 2041, that is a prosperous and developed country. The government of Bangladesh is committed to addressing these issues. I'm very happy to be a part of this event, and I assure you, Bangladesh will be always with you and support any global initiative as well. I thank Mr. Sean Baker, Chief Nutritionist, USAID, for his wonderful moderation and all the panelists present at this virtual event. I hope further discussion on the role of food fortification will make us more enlightened. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for your patience hearing. Jai Bangla, Jai Bangabandhu, long live Bangladesh and all the friendly countries. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister, for those inspirational words and this incredible progress in Bangladesh and your leadership. We're going to move next door to Bihar State in India, and also another sector that has a critical role. We're going to hear from the Honorable Prem Kumar, the Minister of Agriculture for Bihar State in India. Minister Kumar holds a doctorate in history and a master's degree and a bachelor in legislative law. He's been a member of the Bihar Legislative Assembly since 1990 and was appointed minister in 2017. Honorable Minister Kumar, you have 5 minutes for your remarks, please. Okay. Perhaps while we're waiting for Dr. Kumar, we will jump back to Africa and hear from the Honorable Carlos Mosquito, the Minister of Industries and Trade for Mozambique. He served in this role since 2020. Prior to that, he was the Minister of Transport and Communications and is a mechanical engineer by profession. One of the things I'm taking enormous pleasure in is seeing the breadth of people who convert themselves to nutrition advocates. So, Honorable Minister, please, over to you. And then when Minister Kumar is back on, we'll go back to him. Sir.
Well, thank you, Mr. Sean Baker. Through you, I would like to say hello to dignities on this summit, especially this panel, to discuss about the important subject of food security. The government of Mozambique has recognized chronic malnutrition and micronutrient deficiencies as major public health problems and has made a commitment not only to tackle them, as also to monitor closely its implementation. Since the underlying causes of micronutrient deficiency are complex, the government, together with its partners, has adopted a multi-intervention approach, one of which is the mandatory fortification of foods through the National Food Fortification Program established in 2010. Program design and the selection of food vehicles aim to increase the coverage of micronutrients at the national level in order to improve the nutritional status, population health, and productivity of the country. It especially aims to contribute to fill the gap of nutrients in the daily diet of the population, caused partly by low ingestion of vitamins and minerals such as folic acid, zinc, iron, iodine, vitamin A, and vitamin B12. Thus, considerable progress in food fortification has been achieved in Mozambique. Hence, it's mandatory the fortification of salt, maize flour, edible oil, sugar, and wheat flour industrially processed by Decree 9 by 2016, Mozambican standards for fortified foods developed and approved, installation of equipment and pre-mix supply of industries to initiate the production. Support has also been provided to national laboratories with technical training coupled with provision of testing equipment. A wide communication strategy was developed and in place, which include the development of logos and messages and an awareness campaign for fortified food consumers covering the wide range of the country. But most importantly, it was the engagement of the private sectors from the early stage of the project when fortification was still voluntary era regime. Despite efforts of the government, cooperating partners, and other government partners, there are challenges yet to strengthen the consolidation of food fortification legislation, including some allocation of resources for coordination and inspection institutions, improvement actions of awareness and advocacy, and also enhance monitoring routines and the low capacity for the laboratory analysis. A study conducted in 2018 to evaluate the coverage of Mozambique's National Food Fortification Program, its benefit reach across vulnerable groups, and its contribution to recommended nutrient intake of micronutrients concluded that the households in Mozambique have a high consumption rate of the vehicles chosen by the program, indicating a high potential coverage rate of availability. In addition, it also revealed that there is no problem reaching the population with fortified food. However, the problem is to get there with the right concentration of nutrient as per the standards. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. And I think we're hearing some repeat themes here, the importance of government leadership in setting standards, that it be mandatory, and also that strong partnership with the private sector. I don't believe that Minister Kumar is on yet. And so we're going to stay in Africa, but move a bit further north to to the equator itself and hear from a different sector, again, the health. And we have with us the Chief Administrative Secretary of the Ministry of Health of Kenya, Dr. Mercy Mwangangangi. Very pleased to have you today, ma'am. In addition to a medical degree, she moved into public health and has a master's degree in health economics and policy. And she's been very focused on developing the universal health coverage. And we'd like to hear from you, and 5 minutes, please. And thank you for joining us, even though you're in the traffic in Nairobi.
Thank you, Sean Baker. The traffic in Nairobi is legendary, so you should come down and try it and experience it for yourself. I'm pleased to be here today representing the government of Kenya as we have deliberations in this second summit, global summit on food fortification. Indeed, a very important topic and agenda in light of the COVID-19 pandemic, but also in terms of food security, ensuring that our citizens across the world have the nutrition that they require to be able to be productive and to have healthy lives and well-being. Now, Kenya, like many other African countries, is experiencing a triple burden of malnutrition, characterized by both undernutrition and overnutrition. So Kenya experiences, high rates of stunting amongst different age groups. We have wasting and underweight children as well. In terms of micronutrient deficiencies, we also have a wide range of array of deficiencies, touching on vitamin A, zinc deficiencies, iron deficiencies that all lead to anemias, as well as having elements of overnutrition where we have obesity-related conditions, including other non-communicable diseases. Kenya has undertaken numerous surveys and assessments to be able to, really get the data correct in terms of, our undernutrition and overnutrition cases. The most recent is the Kenya Health Demographic Survey of 2014, where 1.9 million children under 5 years of age are noted to be stunted. That's about 26% of that population, and about 4% of them being stunted. And when we look at the different geographical representation of Kenya, we note that as a devolved country, close to almost half of the counties in Kenya have experienced high rates of stunting and wasting, meaning this is indeed an effort. Government needs to put in effort to be able to ensure that with collaboration with different partners, we're able to reduce these rates. We have also been able to conduct micronutrient deficiency surveys that have shown us different rates of micronutrient deficiencies, particularly in pregnant women. Anemia is most prevalent, with about 61.8% of pregnant women suffering from anemia. Now, in terms of our interventions in Kenya, we've been able to put in place both a policy and legal framework that is able to put in place interventions that can combat, food insecurity and that can promote food fortification. Perhaps the most successful one since 1970 is the iodinization of salt. We began with voluntary iodinization of salt, but soon this was made mandatory through a legal notice. And to date, we can say, assessments looking at goiter and such cases have shown great improvements, a reduction almost of 10% of goiter rates within the country. And this is really attributable to the policies that are in place, as well as the legal framework. We have gone ahead and looked at, how we can partner with different ministries and sectors, particularly touching on fortification of wheat flour, fortification of maize meal, which is the key, staple diets within the country, as well as vegetable fats and oils. And gains have been made, particularly with industry players, in ensuring that we now have fortification of wheat flour as well as maize with all the different vitamin groups. We have also looked at the elements of food fortification, reviewed our legislative frameworks. We now do have national food standardization guidelines on fortification, and these are actually effected through a multi-sectoral approach where we have the Ministry of Trade and Industry, particularly our Bureau of Standards, ensuring that it's regulating the sector, it's talking to food industry players, and ensuring that they're able to meet the different guidelines and standards for their different products that are on the market. We have also gone ahead and put in place different coordination mechanisms. I'm sure, Sean, you appreciate that this is a multi-sectoral approach, so you require coordination between the Ministries of Agriculture, the Ministries of Trade and Industry. And so Kenya has put in place a mechanism that ensures that this coordination is done well. And this is primarily nested on the National Food and Nutrition Security Policy. This is a policy that was developed in the year 2012. It is still under implementation in Kenya. And one of the good products of this policy is what we call the Kenya Nutrition Action Plan, KNAP. And that perhaps is our guiding document that steers the different sectors in terms of ensuring that the mandates of all the different sectors are clear and they're able to really champion food fortification. In terms of our key achievements, when we reflect as a country, we feel that our legislation is adequate to be able to champion for food fortification. We are happy with our coordination mechanisms. We are continuing to strengthen this, particularly to ensure that they involve county governments, because Kenya is now devolved and there's a lot of local governments in play who need to take this mantle ahead and ensure that they also do their part in championing for food fortification. We've been able to ensure that we are conducting numerous assessments, ensuring that the data is there to be able to guide our policies, to guide our decision making. However, despite these achievements, we do have a few challenges, particularly when it touches on the small and medium scale food industry sectors, ensuring that those mom and dad shops are able to be aware, industries are able to be aware of the value of food fortification, and that we're actually able to regulate the products that come from those small scale enterprises. We have learned many lessons, and we are pleased to join this global summit today to be able to really contribute from Kenya's experience, but also to learn from the different countries who are represented here in our panel. So thank you, Sean. Excited to be here. Over to you.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. That was, just incredibly compelling, and to underscore what you said, that fortification does require this effective coordination of the different parts of government and, of course, with industry and other groups. I do believe that Minister Kumar is back now, because I know he was in traffic and has just arrived at the office. So if we could check if he's here. If not, we will move to Indonesia, but let's wait for Bihar for a second. I think it's fascinating. It's one of the advantages, we complain about the pandemic and it's a burden, but it is also a remarkable opportunity to hear from so many voices across the world. Actually, I think is Mr. Nono Rusono from Indonesia online?
Yes. Yes.
Yes, okay. Well, thank you very much. And this is another ministry we've actually not heard from yet, a Ministry of Development, the Ministry of National Development Planning. The Honorable Minister was not able to join us, but the Principal Planner, Mr. Nono Rusono, has agreed to join us. So thank you so much for joining us from Indonesia. And also, I think, bringing another ministerial voice to the table. So please, sir, over to you. And you have 5 minutes.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Honorable Sagi, Minister of Health Nigeria, Honorable Renkum, Minister of Agriculture India, Honorable Smate, Minister of Health India, Honorable Nurul Majid, Minister of Industry Bangladesh, Honorable Carlos Mesquite, Minister of Industry and Trade Mozambique, Honorable Ban Gandhi, Chief Secretary, Minister of Health Kenya, Honorable Joseph Sako, Commissioner for Rural Economy and Agriculture, Dr. Henrietta for UNICEF, Dr. Lawrence Haddad, Director of GAIN, Dr. Son Baker, Chief Nutritionist, is as our moderator in this session. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First of all, let us praise and thank to the Almighty God for providing us health and opportunity to be able to attend on the high-level and global summit on food fortification. We appreciate GAIN, Harvest Plus, and Micronutrient Forum to facilitate us and many stakeholders in discussing this important topic. Before discussing different on food fortification and bio fortification, let us see some current progress and projection on food and agriculture development, especially in relation to food and nutrition security. The food security situation based on Global Food Security Index, Indonesia's GFSI score improved during 2018-2019 from 62 to 62.6. However, there are challenges and issues, including first, quality and safety consumption, and second, natural resources. This shows that the food security situation in Indonesia still need to be improved, especially for quality and safety need to be concerned. Especially on the quality of food consumption, although Indonesia has a more significant progress in food and nutrition security. However, some challenges remain. We are facing the issues of triple burden malnutrition, coexisting between undernutrition, overnutrition, and macronutrition deficiency. 1/3 of Indonesia's children are in childhood stunting. This will affect their ability to lead healthy and productivity lives, increases the risk of disease and premature death. In addition, obesity is on the rise, especially in adults, and micronutrient deficiency in pregnant women are increasing. Therefore, the improvement in the quality of food consumption and nutrition is of critical concern. The global, regional, and national circumstances and projections have been taken into account in our national development planning that is stipulated in the presidential regulation number 18 2020 on RPJMN 2020 to 2024. As you may be already informed that RPJMN 2020 to 2024 integrates and includes the indicators and targets of the 2030 Development Agenda SDGs. For the next 5 years development planning, one of our national program priorities in the increasing availability, accessibility, and quality of food, there are 5 priorities activities. First, increasing quality, safety, fortification, and biofortification of food consumption. Second, increasing availability, price stability, and sustainability of food supply, including aquaculture food. Third, increasing productivity and sustainability of agricultural human resources, including market access. Fourth, increasing productivity and sustainability of agricultural natural resources, including agriculture digitalization. And fifth, improving national food system and food governance. As stipulated in the RPJMN 2020 to 2024, The government is committed to ensure food and nutrition security, by which fortification and biofortification is one of the policy direction and strategies for the next 5-year national development planning. We know that deficiency of zinc in the diet is a primary cause of stunting. The Indonesian Center for Rice Research, Ministry of Agriculture, supported by Harvest Plus and the International Rice Research Institute, IRI, successfully bred a variety of rice that is highly high in zinc. This bio-fortified variety, called Invari ER Nutri-Zing variety, was released in Indonesia in late 2018. Rice in our primary staple food, then zinc rice is an effective action to deliver better nutrition to children and their families to deal with the stunting issue. In 2020, the government commits to scaling up zinc rice as part of national strategies to reduce stunting. Already the government have facilitated some 10,000 hectares of ready field planted with Invari IR Nutri-Zing. For 2021, the government targeted an increase to more than 50,000 hectares and 200,000 hectares in 2024. Zinc rice is a practical, sustainable response to stunting in Indonesia. Farming families will benefit from improved nutrition and health, and the high zinc trait will remain in the seed harvest after harvest. For reducing stunting, rice biofortification is one of our intervention. Now some initiatives to improve zinc rice are in our discussion. Link zinc rice in our food aid program, developing market incentive to scale up, etc. Again, we deliver our appreciation for giving us this important change to share our experience, especially on biofortification. We also thanks to GAIN, the Harvest Plus, and the Micronutrient Forum for your continued support and cooperation. We hope that what we have done can contribute to our global food and nutrition security. Finally, we look forward to enhance our global cooperation with all stakeholders to transform our food system toward more resilient and sustainable. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I think it's an incredible demonstration of your ministry being able to pull all the pieces together. I want to jump now from the perspective of a regional community, which I think has such incredible influence. The African Union and the Malabo Declaration was really, I think, a landmark in Africa-wide commitment to combating malnutrition. We're very pleased to have with us Ambassador Joseph Leonel Correa Sacco, who's the Commissioner for Rural Economy and Agriculture for the African Union Commission. Ambassador Sacco, please, over to you. And thank you so much for joining us. I know you have a very busy schedule right now.
Good afternoon from Addis Ababa. Good morning, good evening, depending on your geographical location. I thank you for the invitation, and it's my pleasure to share our experience on the role of the biofortification and the effort to mitigate malnutrition across African Union, that is the continent, because I'm representing 55 member countries situation, and also to share with you some greatest success vis-a-vis the biofortification across our region, Africa. I thank you. Biofortification is recognized as one of the viable initiatives in the quest for mainstreaming nutrition in agriculture. It is complementary to diet diversification, food supplementation, and industrial food fortification. Biofortification is particularly beneficial for smallholder farming families that rely on staple crops for the bulk of their diet and that have limited access to other important nutrition intervention such as fortification and supplementation. In times of shocks such as the pandemic COVID-19 that we are living now, in terms of when we have drought because of climate change, we have a flood, etc., smallholders and vulnerable people do not have to rely on complicated and inaccessible distribution system to consume nutritious foods. Biofortified staples such as vitamin A, we can find it in cassava, maize, and sweet potato. Iron, we can find it in beans and the pearl millets. Zinc, we can find it in maize and rice, can be planted by the farmer and consumed within short cycle. We need to educate them and tell them that they have some products that they can go through without going to look at other, other external products. Therefore, biofortification is another scientifically established agriculture technology that, if it's taken to scale, can mitigate micronutrient malnutrition on our continents. On the other hand, biofortified crops are targeted to rural community and the staple crop. After the initial investment, the seed can be raised and adapted to other regions at a low cost. Most biofortified crops, except for hybrid crops, can be shared between the farmers through the leadership of the organizations such as Harvest Plus. If they're there, I really commend the effort that they are doing to work with African Union. The International Potato Center and other SG Center, Africa has played a strong leadership role in the development and dissemination of these nutrient-rich crops, including cassava, maize, and sweet potato enriched with vitamin A, and beans and pearl millets enriched with iron. The first ever large-scale deployment of the fortified crop vitamin A orange sweet potato was found in Mozambique and in Uganda, laid the foundation for the global biofortification movement today. It is worth noting that biofortified crops are in testing or have been released in 38 countries across Africa to date. 14 African countries, Burkina Faso, Burundi, Republic Democratic of Congo, Ethiopia, Ghana, Malawi, Mozambique, Nigeria, Rwanda, Senegal, Tanzania, Uganda, Zambia, and Zimbabwe, already included biofortification in their policies and program. The head of states in several African Union member countries have publicly endorsed biofortification. African researchers, and I commend Dr. Robert Mwanga of Uganda and Dr. Maria Andrade of Cape Verde, shared the 2016 World Food Prize for their pioneering work in biofortification. I am pleased to inform this platform that for the last 3 years, my office has been enjoyed good working relationship with Harvest Plus and SIP to advance a policy for scaling up investment in biofortification along the biofortified crop value chain. or for experimental fields to the consumption of finished products. I am also pleased to inform you that the last two ministerial meetings of the Specialized Technical Committee on Agriculture, Rural Development, Water, and Environment endorsed Bio Fortification in Africa, which is a major milestone and a step forward. I thank you for your kind attention.
Ambassador Sacco, thank you so much for that compelling case for biofortification. I think it really illustrates the great complementarity between large-scale fortification and industrial fortification and biofortification and the progress that can be made. And also, I think you make the case of why leadership at that continental level can be so instrumental to drive progress across Africa and in other regions of the world. I'm going to stay in Africa for a bit and go to my neighbor, since most people who know me know that actually home is in Dakar, Senegal. And I would like to check in if the Honorable Minister of Health from the Gambia, Dr. Amadou Lamine Samate, is online.
Yes, Mr. Baker, I'm online. I can hear you.
Yes, sir. Great. I know that I'm going to be accused of geographic bias here by going next door, but I think others will appreciate it. Prior to his appointment, he was the chief medical director for the teaching hospital in Banjul. Honorable Minister, we'd like to turn to you. And we only have about 7 minutes left. So if you could keep your remarks succinct, then we're going to move to Bihar. So over to you, Honorable Minister Samate.
Thank you very much, Mr. Baker. I will try to read very fast. Thank you, Mr. Baker. Good afternoon to you and distinguished honorable colleagues, distinguished officials representing other countries and institutions. Greetings from the Gambia. It is a great honor for me to be part of the panelists representing the Gambia at this high-level event. The government of the Gambia is committed to ensure food and nutrition security for its population. We are aware that food security does not directly translate into improved nutritional status, though a prerequisite. Hence, government making efforts to invest in related areas, including water, sanitation, education, health, and economic empowerment, especially of women and other inputs, to build the resilience of the households. Cognizant of the fact that nutrition is not a single sectoral issue, has led the government of the Gambia to recognize it as an important pillar of national development. The National Nutrition Policy 2010 to 2020 was updated in 2017 and goes up to 2025, including a food fortification strategy. It is accompanied by a costed strategic plan. The Gambia Cost of Hunger in Africa report estimates that the associated cost of undernutrition to the economy through health, education, and labor productivity in a single year. For the Gambia, the total losses associated with undernutrition in 2018 are estimated at 3.96 billion Gambian dollars. That's equivalent to 83.4 million US dollars. This is about 5.1% of our GDP. The Gambia has taken some very important steps by joining several initiatives on nutrition and improving its policy, programming, and institutional framework to improve sustainability. The Gambia has been a member of the Scaling Up Nutrition, that's the SUN movement, which is a global initiative to improve multi-sectoral collaboration and coordination of nutrition actions, mainly at country level since July 2011. The Gambia is also a signatory to the African Union 2014 Malabo Declaration under the Comprehensive Africa Agriculture Development Program, a regional initiative that emphasizes the importance of agriculture and food systems for improved nutrition. The implementation of the Cost of Hunger in Africa study in 2019 demonstrates the government's commitment to achieve nutrition security. Worthy of note is the Gambia's endorsement of the 2014 Rome Declaration on Nutrition, with the outcome of the Second International Conference on Nutrition. The Rome Declaration is operationalized through the framework for action that sets priority areas of work and interventions to be implemented at national level, with support from the regional and global level. Furthermore, the country has endorsed the Sustainable Development Goals, especially SDG 2, that's end hunger, achieve food security, and improve nutrition and promote sustainable agriculture, taking into consideration all the necessary actions for its implementation. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, malnutrition is a major public health problem in the Gambia, adversely affecting vulnerable groups among the population, specifically women of reproductive age and children under 5 years of age. According to the 2019-2020 Gambia Demographic and Health Survey, stunting levels are at 18%, underweight at 12%, and wasting at 5% for children under 5 years of age. It is important to keep focusing on the reduction of malnutrition in the Gambia by combating all forms. Micronutrient deficiency or hidden hunger are also a major public health concern in the Gambia, with vitamin A deficiency, iron deficiency, anemia, and iodine deficiency disorders being micronutrient deficiencies of public health importance. Similarly, these affect mostly children under 5 years and women of reproductive age, and are mainly reflecting the great intake of micronutrients from the daily diet. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, food fortification is identified as a cost-effective way of providing regular intake of essential micronutrients to the population. Until 2017, the Gambia was the only country in West Africa with no regulation on highly consumed food vehicle except salt. However, the last 2 years witnessed an increased commitment with the revision of the Food Fortification and Salt Iodization Regulation of 2006. The country further developed guidelines and plans are far ahead to gazette fortification of
Honorable Minister Samate, you seem to have frozen up.
Your Excellency, Mr. Moderator, Mr. Sean.
Yes.
Yeah, I beg to leave. I have got another program.
Yes, sir, that's fine. We're going to be closing up in a few minutes. So,
can I leave?
Honorable Minister, yes, and thank you so much. And I hope to see you in Dhaka soon.
Thank you, everybody, the other minister and my friend from India also, Mr. Subihar.
And I would ask the technicians to see if they can unlock Dr. Samate. And then while we're waiting, our last panelist, Dr. Prem Kumar, the Honorable Minister of Agriculture from the state of Bihar, we'd give you the last words since we're not going to have any questions since we've had such great interventions for the panelists. So, sir, could you give your remarks?
Distinguished panel, honorable member, and ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to congratulate Harvest Plus Gain and Micronutrient Forum for organizing this second global summit on food fortification under COVID-19 condition to accelerate the two highly effective food systems and food fortification in order to prevent micronutrient deficiencies worldwide. I wish to thank Cognize for providing me an opportunity to participate in such an important event. It my proud privilege to mention that our Honorable Prime Minister Sri Narendra Damodar Das Modi and the recent celebration of World Food Day on the occasion of 75th Foundation Day of FAO dedicated 17 bio fortified variety of 8 important field crops to the nation. In this address the emphasis the importance and role of biofortification in ensuring nutritional security and highlighted other nutrition program like organic farming, climate smart agriculture, Poshan Abhiyan, Cleanliness campaign, Swachh Mission in implemented by our government. Biofortified crops provide a long-term, cost-effective and sustainable solution to improve human nutrition. The national government intend to scale up production of biofortified crops varieties and integrate them in government support programs such as midday meals, Anganwadi, public distribution schemes for school children to reach the most vulnerable population groups. Several steps have been taken by the government. The agriculture roadmap, the state government has a strategy document on agriculture development which is developed on every 5 years with own objective of overall development of food and nutrition security. In the recent roadmap of 2017 to 22, we have strategically mentioned the promotion of nutrition-rich crop, biofortified crops to ensure the nutritional security of the population of the state. Nutrition-rich variety will also have a major focus in seed village scheme to promote its production and बीज बीज वाहन विकास वाहन program for seed distribution and extension of technology, crop development, our two state of art agriculture university and 38 कृषि विज्ञान केंद्र farmer schools and consequently conducting research on biofortification of cereal crops. The state has released on biofortified variety on high zinc wheat and in future several potential varieties in the pipeline. Biofortification research leadership has been established in India with collaboration of Harvest Plus State Agriculture Universities and Indian Council for Agriculture Research and Varieties at CR Dhan 315 HI 1633 rich in protein, iron and zinc. Seed production and distribution steps has been taken to accelerate the seed production of biofortified zinc wheat state seed production policy, and during current year we have provided seed to farmers and subsidized rate to that the production and production level increases. Nutrition Village in collaboration with Harvest Plus RDC and the State Agriculture Department are piloting an integrated nutrition village in our state to ensure the nutrition security. It is a convergence initiative of all the program and partner. This initiative will demonstrate a holistic farming model that optimizes nutrition for farming families and promotes ecological resilience. The state will take care of the awareness and capacity strengthening of producer and demonstration of biofortified variety. The entire village will cultivate with biofortified crops with the support of Harvest Plus, Poshan Abhiyan. Food fortification and nutrition is an important part of Poshan Abhiyan by the state government. I am extremely happy and thankful to Harvest Plus for their support and collaboration in this novel initiative, and I am confident together we will scale fortified crops so that every household has access to nutritious foods. It is important that we include biofortified grains in state-run public distribution programs, especially to address nutritional requirement of expectant mothers and infants to attain Kuposhan, Mukta Bharat, Malnutrition, Free India, and also once again thanks to the organizer, GAIN, Micronutrient Forum and Harvest Plus. Thank you. Thank you.
Honorable Minister Kumar, thank you so much, and thank you for that closing. Unfortunately, given time constraints, we're not going to be able to do questions, and I have the honor to pass it back to Lawrence.
Thank you, Sean. Can you hear me, everyone?
So I have it to turn over. Thank you, Honorable Minister Kumar, for your remarks. I will pass it on to Lawrence to close. But I think it's just stunning to hear ministerial leadership from industry, from health, from agriculture, from planning and development, and from continental-wide leadership. And I think this is exactly the leadership we need to put an end to micronutrient malnutrition. With that, a huge thanks to all of our panelists, and over to you, Lawrence, to close this up.
Thank you, Sean and panel, for a fascinating set of insights on leadership. The breadth of sectors, Sean, as you said, represented was breathtaking, and you know, the willingness of these leaders, these excellencies, to navigate traffic, you know, administrative, political, and literal traffic, is a telling indication of their commitment to this issue. So I'm really humbled. It leaves me to close out the summit. It's clear from the three panels that while large-scale food fortification and biofortification are not silver bullets, they are key strands for weaving this basket that can bring healthy diets to the table. They're integral to that. Fortification, whether it's large-scale or biofortification, it's a game-changing food system action. It's hidden in plain sight. It deserves to be in a stronger spotlight. India is a stunning example of how to scale impact and targets and target vitamin and mineral deficiencies of the poorest and most vulnerable. But we had other inspirational examples from the excellencies from Nigeria, Bangladesh, the Gambia, Mozambique, Kenya, Indonesia, Bihar, and from the commissioner from the African Union, Josefa Sako. So what are the priorities emerging from today? I think first, we need some kind of plan to embed fortification more clearly in the Nutrition for Growth and Food System Summit processes to help governments make strong commitments. Agnes Kalibata and others noted, fortification is going to help the two summits meet their goals. And the summits in turn will be critically important milestones to mobilize resources, investments, partnerships, and commitments for fortification to meet its potential. I think second, we need to make it clear that everyone has a role to play. This is truly an all corners of society effort. National governments can establish mandates, ensure that existing programs are monitored with good regulation, incentivized and enforced. International organizations and standard setters can support robust guidance, encouraging action. Donors can increase their commitment and funding. Industry, large and small, can produce high quality fortified foods. Civil society and consumers can call for greater attention to diet quality and hold industry and governments accountable. And researchers, as we have seen, can enable us to evaluate, learn, and critically improve. And you know, importantly, everyone, no matter who they are, no matter where they are, needs to show leadership. The kind of leadership that we've seen. It's humble, it's focused, it's determined. Change takes time, but we can speed that up with the right leadership. Now, throughout 2021, the Fortification Summit virtual event series We'll run webinars and produce tools and data to help all of the stakeholders do this kind of thing. And the details will be shared with you on the screen or in the chat box. But I leave you with this one final thought, colleagues. In 2025, at the time of the 3rd Global Food Fortification Summit, wherever that will be, how are we going to remember this summit, the 2nd summit? I think we'll want to remember it as the summit that celebrated another 700 million people consuming fortified foods. But we'll also want to remember it as the summit that paved the way for billions of additional people to consume staple foods that are fortified. And in these uncertain times, we have an approach right in front of us that is impactful, cost-effective, and resilient. It's fortification. And investments which the ministers and other policymakers on our panels and beyond can have no regrets in backing. It works. Working together, you have made it work. So by joining forces in even more purposeful and even more determined ways, we can, in the coming years, complete the unfinished agenda and together fortify the future. And with that, I would just like to thank all the organizers, all the panelists, all the participants. I'm very sorry we went over time, but thank you for the generosity of spirit, and please keep the energy going. I hope you are fortified to complete the unfinished agenda and get fortified foods to billions of people that need it. Thank you, organizers. Thank you, everybody. To be continued.